In 2009, Srikanth Adiga founded Krishagni. Their flagship product is called Open Specimen. It helps clinical research centers in 20 countries manage their biospecimen data in a highly configurable way. Now, Krishagni is unusual in many ways. It's a bootstrapped company. It works in open source. It has chosen to remain relatively small. So why did they make these choices? Did 2020 reshape their culture, the way they uplevel in any significant fashion? So if you're an entrepreneur who prefers small teams, working closely in a product development domain, there's a lot to learn from Srikanth's journey. Srikanth, welcome to our Choose to Think Smartcast.
Thanks, Ramanand.
So Srikanth, can you tell us briefly about what Krishagni does and what Open Specimen is all about?
Sure. So I find it always very hard to explain to people what we do, given the problem that we are solving. So we are a software product development company we used to be based in Pune, and we used to say based in Pune, but now our people are all over India. So because of the pandemic. So we are a Pune-based software product company. So we work with academic research centers, for example, Stanford, Johns Hopkins, Oxford, Cambridge, who are doing medical research. For example, a lot of people are today doing COVID-related research. So we initially started, when we started, cancer was one of our main disease that we used to work with. So you can think of it more like, whenever people do research, for example, when now COVID research is going on, they collect blood, or for cancer, they would collect tumor, brain tumor, breast tumor, etc. And they're stored in a bank called as biobank. So that is, you can imagine like fridge, a freezer of say minus 80 degrees, etc. And then whenever someone else comes and says that, okay, I'm doing a breast cancer research project, and I need 100 samples or 100 tumors, which is say aged between 40 to 60, an African American woman has been smoking this much, they will give 20 parameters. So they should be able to go into a database and search whether they have these kinds of specimens. If they have, which freezer is it in, and where in the freezer is it located, etc. So it's kind of a sample management software, what is popularly known as LIMS. But it is very dedicated to academic research centers, very dedicated to managing biospecimens, biobanks, biorepositories, etc. So you can also very simplistically, you can think of it as a library management software where you've got books lying in shelves, and then the librarian has to search for a specific book, etc. So something very similar. And when you check out, you need to know when did you check it out, whom did you give, when are they giving it back, and how are they going to use it, etc., etc. So that's in some simple terms what we do.
So I'm sure some of your clients, they must be at working on the forefront of research around COVID-19.
Yeah.
So tell us something about a sense of how you guys have been part of that in some sense, right? So
sure.
Tell us more about that.
So before COVID started, we used to work with a lot of other diseases like cancer, diabetes, or renal, other organs, or a lot of Africa-based projects in say pregnancy, child deaths, etc., etc. So when COVID hit, we were talking to a lot of, before that, we were talking to a lot of customers about, like new customers adopting Open Specimen, etc. So we saw suddenly people in urgency in adopting the software because they got funded for some COVID research. And in many cases, we had to something that would take say 3 months, 6 months, had to be done in a matter of couple of weeks so that they can quickly start collecting the specimens, start recording the specimens, etc. So it was a very interesting time at the, even now we do those kinds of implementations where we get, because once people get funded and have the money to get started, they want to quickly recruit patients, because, there are so many COVID cases coming in some, etc. So so it was a very interesting time in terms of our own product journey, because we had to, and one of the good things that we had done before COVID was that the product itself was highly configurable for any kind of diseases. We also do animal collections. We do a lot of different kinds of things. So it helped us to quickly configure without a lot of efforts, without say doing a product change or having to build a new COVID module, etc., etc. So yeah, so it was very interesting time.
So Shrikant, do you have a background in biology, or do you what did you have to do to get into this domain?
No, so yeah, sometimes people send me mail saying Dr. Adiga, and I have to say them no. So no, I have no biology background. In fact, I didn't even take biology in 11th and 12th when it was an option. So the one good part of what we do is you don't really need a lot of biology background. It's more common sense related stuff. It's not like say proteomics, genomics, one of those things where you next gen sequencing, etc., where you really need to understand, what's DNA, what is its structure, and all those things. So, but other than that, the way I got into all this was in my previous company, which was more of a service oriented company where we both met. Used to work with the customer in the US, who's an academic research center. And so through that, we got funded to develop an open source software for the government, for the US government, which is NIH and National Cancer Informatics, etc. So I worked on that project for about 4 or 5 years. And as part of that, I visited, so I was in US for a year in that university, and also, visited regularly. And we started working with a lot of other universities because of that work. So that kind of got me into this world of clinical research informatics. So informatics for clinical research or software for clinical research, etc. So otherwise, even now I struggle. One of the initial demos that I was doing when we developed the query interface for our product, this was in say 2008 or 2007. So I was trying to give a demo, and it was like a conference call full of doctors and researchers, etc. And my query was returning 0 results during the live demo. So I was trying to figure out as to what wrong am I doing. So, and then one of the doctors pointed me out saying, Srikanth, you're trying to look for prostate specimens in females. So, you're not going to get that. So, which is kind of indication of how much biology you.
Interesting. So, there has been a lot of advancements in terms of the intersection between computer science, information technology, and biology. So you are now part of that. But tell me, what you do, can it also be considered as part of bioinformatics, or is that a separate field? Demystify some of these terms for us.
Yeah, bioinformatics specifically is referred to where people do more analysis of the data. Especially in proteomics, genomics, next-gen sequencing, and things like that. So, for example, Pune University has a master's in bioinformatics, and I think bachelor's in bioinformatics. We used to hire heavily from them in earlier, or a couple of people in our current company come from that. But what we do is standard software development, just that it's used in medical research, and we don't really do the core bioinformatics work as such. But that's a completely different domain, and a very interesting one, but not something that we do anything in it.
Right. So the other thing that is interesting about what you do is that you're part of the open source world.
Yeah.
So and because previously you've been part of a services side of a background. So tell me, what is different about working in open source?
Yeah.
Do you have to have a different mindset, or do you, how do you treat that world, and how do you see that world?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a big fan of open source. Pretty much use only open source software. For example, none of us. I never paid a license for Microsoft. Not that I use Microsoft, pirated copies. We always used Linux, Ubuntu, Mac, etc. But never. I never paid for say Microsoft Office. So that way we are hardcore open source guys, and especially in medical research in general, a research environment. People appreciate the sense of collaboration, the sense of community, etc. That comes along with open source product, or that open source mindset as such. And similarly, I strongly feel that any public funded, government funded project should be open source, unless there is a very specific reason why it can't be open source. So, and a key reason for existence of our company has been that the US government, which funded the project, the initial versions of the project, kept it open source. And when they closed the funding and they said, we don't have any more money, we want the community to take it forward. We were able to take that product, and there were already people who were using it, and then build a commercial open source version on top of it. So that is the power of open source. And we highlight that a lot when we do our marketing, saying that you are not at a mercy of a single developer or a single company when something is open source. So if you tomorrow don't like us, you don't need to come to us. You can hire a developer and maintain the software. You can hire a IT services company and maintain. You can gang up with 5 other customers and have your own. You can do so many things. And tomorrow, if we close, you don't need to bother about what will happen to our product. You can still continue using it and maintaining it. So we highlight that a lot with our customers. So I have been and also open source is the key thing about open source is that people are too fixated with their source code, which is not really your IP, or like what does it take to rebuild for someone the same product in a different source code. So it's not really big deal to have source code. It's your ideas, it's your vision, it's your way you handle the problem, the way clients pursue you as someone who has been there, done that, all those kinds of things. What are you going to do next with that product? What features are you getting? And no one is going to take away that from you, and that is what is your core competency. Source code, even tomorrow, you write something today, you rewrite something tomorrow. So unless you have like a super secret sauce of building an algorithm that only no one else knows, there's no value in your source code. In all probability, your source code is actually very bad. So it does not, people who might actually download that source code say, that's okay, I'll just rewrite this one.
Interesting. Okay. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other advantage of open source, which again something that we highlight a lot, is that we can tell our clients saying that, see, everyone else is closed source. We are open source. So now you download the software and give it to any security expert, anyone whom you want to audit it, and make sure that this has no problems with in terms of security, because we work with a lot of patient data, etc. Now no one does it. But the fact that we tell them this makes them feel that, okay, why are that this seems to be a lot more secure than the others. Whereas the general perception is that, it is open source, then it is not secure, because somehow people think it's open as in it's the database is open, or the data is open. So this helps us a lot. And if you see a lot of the last year discussion about Arogya Setu app and all those things, and wanting to do that open source, and then they did some namesake open source, etc. So this if they had kept it fully open source from the start, there would have been zero controversy.
Interesting. So in a sense, open source can also be a source of business advantage. It doesn't have to just be a philosophy.
Yeah. In fact, one founder whom I met, I said open source. He said open source is a marketing gimmick, which in some sense true. Which in some sense, because if you you need a story to tell, right? How are you different from others? So because there are 100 other similar options available. Now you can't just compete based on features. Everyone has by and large 80% same features, 20% someone has more, some 20%. And how long does it take to plug that gap if it is really a critical feature? So you finally need to have a good story to say, and our story always has been that we are open source. So that's helped a lot.
Interesting. So another component to your story is that you're a product development team. You are also a small team. So having worked, again, contrasting it with our regular IT service providers, because that is based on scale, based on a lot of people. So is small beautiful, and is this your decision to be bootstrapped, to be small? Was it a very deliberate decision? Is that how you wanted to do it?
Yeah, today that I work in this mode where our team is never been more than 15 people in the last 6 to 7 years. I have a lot of respect and sympathy for the project managers of large groups. So it's this is a lot more peaceful, a lot more productive, a lot more meaningful, purposeful, etc., etc. So yeah, it's a very deliberate decision. We have the resources to hire a lot more people and try to do a lot more things. But whenever we did that in the past, for example, going a little back, when I came out and started on my own in 2009, the first thing that I did was try to build a software for doctors in Pune. So it was called Paper Free Doctor, and this was pretty much even before Practo, or even at least maybe Practo was also small and unknown in Bangalore. Maybe they were trying to do, but it was not the name that it is today. So and we were a couple of guys, I had a developer or so. I was trying to do again bootstrapped, and it went well. But then it didn't work out. We had to kind of kill the product, because even though we had about 20-25 doctors in Pune using it, I didn't see a way to scale it, because in case of this typical B2C products, you need those hockey stick scaling and all those things, which because we were per doctor, we weren't making a lot of money. And I had to go and sit in the OPD in between the patients and the medical reps and the doc and the receptionist was, for them,
Giving you
everyone is
dirty
the
looks.
same. But yeah, and the very good doctors who had the money and the patients didn't have time for things like this. And the other doctors, they didn't have patients and didn't have money. They had all the time. So they would be, so it was, and then we transitioned into a typical services model. So we had about 50 people working in our company, about 5-6 projects, purely in clinical research, all in the same domain. We used to work with a couple of universities in the US doing similar stuff. And so that was a phase of, say, services only. And that is where we saw this potential of, building this product, taking over an open source product, of which I was one of the first developers, and then continue to make experiments and improve it. And slowly we started getting more and more customers. So at one point we had a time where we had equal business in terms of revenue from the product and the services, which is when we take a bold decision of saying, we are going to close down all the services projects. So we talked to our customers and said, let's do a handover in the next 6 months. We even gave them resources from the US. Our employees who are working on this project, they hired them on H1. Even now they're working in the same universities after 10 years. So it kind of worked out very well for both parties. And then we dedicatedly, focused on the product. And that was one of the, because services can be addictive, because it's easy money, right? So you're not really, you have people, as long as no one is complaining, once in a while there is some mail, and then you go and handle that situation, and then it will keep going. And especially if you do a good job, the customer will give you more projects. But it is also a lot of headache in terms of people hiring. Then you need infrastructure. Then you need more office. It's operationally, and also the bigger part is that you don't really see a meaning in what you're doing, because you don't have control over what features get added. You don't really can ask a lot of questions because the client has figured everything out. Whereas when you're doing your own product, you have you have a lot more independence, a lot of you can try a lot of different things. 2 things work, then you can build more things on those 2 things, etc., etc. So that is so that transition, because I used to work in a company which was huge. Even in that company I joined when the company was about 40-50 people, and then it went, and when I left it was about 5,000 people. And then my own journey of being, say, 3 people to 50 people, and then back to 10-15 people, I think this is the best of all the worlds that I've seen, in terms of how I utilize my own time, how the people utilize their time. During COVID, I had a few guests who were like staying with me for a couple of weeks and working from here. And I saw them on calls almost whole day, about 6-7 hours, and they're always talking to someone. And I'm like, when do you do your work? This. So I find this mode where you have a small number of people who are very good at what they're doing, and therefore they don't need a lot of handholding. And especially when you're doing a product, it is fairly easy to do that, because you got specific things that you want people to learn, you got specific things that you want people to get better at, etc. So this is the small is definitely beautiful. Small works. For example, WhatsApp, when they sold themselves to at 17 billion to Facebook, they were like 35 people, and half of them were not even developers. Last week we attended a webinar. Vinayak, our CTO, attended a webinar of Zerodha. And Zerodha has 3 teams of 5 developers. So if I don't know, they make some obscene amount of revenue, 1700 crores or something like that with 15 developers. They have a much bigger team of sales, marketing, and all the people who take the calls, etc., run around. But the core development team, I think, is not more than 20-25 people with support and things like that. So the most important thing is that with small team, you can control quality a lot. Which is what goes out of hand, because then you start making compromises. You can't review everything that everyone does. You can't mentor people on a one-on-one basis, etc. So yeah, so that's been our small definitely is better.
Yeah, quite a few things that I want to dig deeper into. So let's start with your CTO, Vinayak. So
Sure.
that is again an interesting story because again, to 2020, uh, here is a person who is actually working remotely, and he's your CTO. He's one of the leaders in your organization, and not just that, he's working from Hubli, which is not your top tier city. So tell me a little bit about how you guys coordinate, collaborate. How does that experience of top level leadership being distributed work for you guys?
Sure. So Vinayak, started working from home sometime in 2012. So he's kind of a pioneer of work from home. So he has always been there. So he went back home. His parents stay there, and he built a home in a house there, etc. So he has been doing that forever. And he's the CTO architect. He writes 95% of the code. So he's the one who actually wrote the whole product from a technical point of view, from a coding point of view. And I heard a term from someone called code tyrant. So he's the Raul Dravid of coding, where you can't write from the indentation. Luckily you don't have to write. You don't have to write with hand, otherwise you would have had a hard time with handwriting and things like that. So he's very, very specific with things, and he's super productive. And that has been what is the when we were that 50 people mode, where he had a lot of developers who used to work with him. He almost never used to get time to do his things, his coding, and because he's continuously reviewing code, helping others, trying to tell them what to do, etc. And the push to go small came from him. So saying that it is, I'll deliver you whatever you want, but if you're going to have so many people under me, then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, when I sit on my own and think about what did I achieve in this week, I don't have anything to show, and it's really bothering me. It's really frustrating, etc. And that's when I said, okay, let's cut him loose, and you do your thing. And after a week or so, in a month or so, I was asking him, so how do you feel now? He's like, I feel like a bachelor, no responsibility. I have no responsibility anymore. So, it's like good old days of doing whatever you want to do. So, so he has been doing that. So how does it work? So he in the first place has a very different working style, working habits and things like that. So he gets up very early in the morning. So by 6, he has already checked his mails and started work, etc. So we have a call in the morning. So the reason why it has worked well is he's very good at communication, and which is what is probably the single most thing that you need to have working remotely, or for that matter, even non-remotely. Right. But he's supremely good at communication, be it be written or speaking. He calls me, we have a short call, typically 10-15 minutes, and we talk about what is he going to do, what is he working on, and any other client related issues, any other technical issues that has come up. And during the day, if he has done with something and he wants to give a demo, etc., we have a quick demo and look at what he has done, exchange feedback. So that is one reason why it has worked out well. The second reason is also, he's not a yes man in terms of just saying, because as a programmer, as developers, that is the biggest problem that you face with people, that they look at everything as a coding problem. So you just give them a problem, they'll go and solve it. It does not matter what it is. You want someone to build a 3-legged table, they'll build it. So they will not ask what happened to the other leg, right? So So, Vishal Sikka, who joined Infosys as the CEO, and said that Indians are very good at problem solving, but they're not good at problem finding. So you give them a problem, they Google, copy paste from Stack Overflow here, there, and the problem is solved. But they'll not come back to you and say, this there's already a solution for this. There's already a workaround. Things like that. They'll not find holes in your. But that's what Vinayak does. So he will say, oh well, this this is not how it's. Even if the request has come from the customer, we push back and say, no, we're not going to do this because of X, Y, or Z reasons. Just because you're doing something wrong does not mean that we have to keep supporting all kinds of features in the product. Even small is good is also applies to your product. That you don't just go on adding 100 features just because trying to make everyone happy. So those kinds of pushback from him is important, and he so those two things, apart from him being super productive, super techie guy, this combination of very good programming skills, very good technical skills, and that applies to his in-depth knowledge in databases, in-depth knowledge in Linux, in-depth knowledge in Java, etc. He's a great great communicator, great guy in terms of design, understanding of the big picture, asking, not rushing. So he's always working on his pen and paper, and that's something that he tells everyone, that close your computer. When you're trying to solve a problem and trying to understand, draw everything on your book, come up with, that's when you actually understand what the problem is, instead of just trying to open a CPP file or a Java file and start solving problems. So he's been a one of someone who has done this for the last 8-10 years, and that gives him that independence, the having to have his own schedule, not being distracted by others, and he has very specific way of doing things too. So anyone needs his help, he'll say, okay, after 3 p.m. once I have lunch, come back, then I'm all yours. So we'll figure all this, any calls, any demos, let me work on my problems until that. And unless it's obviously a production server has crashed and someone needs his help, etc. But most things can wait. We are not in the doctors in ICU that things can't wait.
Correct. I mean, in some sense, they talk about these 10x engineers, right? But if you actually see the components of what makes someone that 10x person, it is not just your technical ability, but his productivity, communication, structuring, right? All that goes into being that 10x person. I think the last thing is to let the 10x person be the 10x person, not make him a 1x person, by virtue of what you've designed. So Srikanth, before we talk about a few more topics, I want to, we always have a quiz question as part of the Smartcast, and I know that you have, you have some leg up on our other participants because you've heard a lot of our questions. You participated in some of them, so you know how we think. So here's the first question for you today. So this is a question on cricket, and I know you are into cricket. You like to follow the history of the sport. So here's a question from the 1985-86 India series. Okay, so in that season, before leaving for Australia, this Indian cricketer added an extra letter to his name for numerological reasons. He wanted it to be a 9-letter name. So who is this person?
Is he my namesake?
That would be
Krishnamachari Srikanth.
Absolutely, that is K. Srikanth. So one of the early kind of characters in the Indian team. If he had been, I think in this current age, I'm sure he would have been all over social media as a player, and he had a lot of crazy temperament and swashbuckling. So speaking of cricket, what have been your what are your kinds of cricketers? Are they the Rahul Dravid kinds of characters, or is it the Rishabh Pant kind of characters?
No, so first about Krishnamachari Srikanth. So he used to be my, when I was, so 80s was when I was like in my 10 year, 15 year, 20 year time. Krishnamachari Srikanth was our favorite at that time for his mannerism, the way he used to bat, and he was the original T20 player at that time when there was no T20, right? And the other thing is, other than sharing a name, we also share nickname.
Oh, you
So,
do?
so yeah, so I let you figure that out. What is the nickname? It's also a nickname of Virat Kohli.
Oh, yeah, Chika,
So
right? Chika and Chiku. Yeah.
Chika Chiku,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to cricket, yeah, definitely the Rahul Dravid and the Cheteshwar Pujara guys. So I pretty much don't watch one days and T20s.
Hmm.
Uh, I watch all test matches. In fact, the one you are in between my test match. So one of the, in fact, before this Australia series, got so much hyped up, and
Correct.
all this hangama that happened. Before that, I was one decision that I had made was that I want to watch every test match that happens in India, and that gives me an opportunity to travel as well as not miss good matches. And obviously, that's an super ambitious, and I know maybe I'll meet a 50% target of that. And that was also because I was reading, Clive Lloyd's
Hmm.
autobiography, and I felt very bad of having missed all
That
the,
era.
Tendulkar era, Dravid era, and not seen a single test match. Uh, so many great cricketers came and went. Lara, all these guys. Not seeing them even once live was made me feel very, very bad. So I made the decision, and this thing happened. So I'm hoping to go to Ahmedabad next,
Okay.
at the end of this month to see the day and night test match, if
Nice.
they open for the crowd. So definitely the Rahul Dravid, the test match characters. I think people obviously find it very boring for very valid reasons.
Hmm.
But I love test match.
Great. Okay. So let's, since you spoke about T20s and 2020, let's come back to that topic. So, like many other companies, Krishagni had an office in Pune before the lockdowns happened. So, a year later, what has changed in the way you operate, and what surprised you, if at all, about this shift?
the the change is that we don't have the office anymore. So we officially we are working from home, and also we don't have an office. So we gave up the lease, we closed the office, we moved out our stuff. So from pretty much in June, as soon as they opened the lockdown, that was the first thing that I did, and told people not to expect to come back to Pune and work in an office until say March, and now I'm telling until the end of this year. And unless I see, really get a big pushback from our employees and say we want to sit together somewhere. So what we have been planning to do is do a monthly company meet somewhere and trying to figure how that works, etc. But yeah, so that is from a physical operational point of view. We are no more, and we don't have an address. So my home is now the official office address. So so that was the big change. And but with Vinayak being remote always, and I had a working style where I used to go to office in the morning about say 9:30, 10, but I used to come back by 2:33 to office, and I used to continue from home. Even that was my standard working style
Right.
all throughout before too. So it was kind of, we were all, and also more than about 2 to 3 people were always working from home. Even some of them were living in Pune. I had a guy who used to work in Jalandhar. There were a couple of ladies who had say health issues or wanted to take care of the kids, etc., etc. So they wanted to work. So we had, it was not
Correct.
a big change in terms of operations or mentality or thinking about it. We were always very lenient about letting people. I used to tell people who used to go on say a week off to Nagpur to meet their parents. I used to say take 2 weeks off, do 1 week
Right.
work from home, stay at home. You're going, what is the hurry to come back, right? So that always was our this one. The surprise for me was that how much it didn't matter. The whole office, having so much effort that goes into maintaining an office.
Correct.
You figure out that, well, all this was not even needed. So and obviously there are downsides to it, especially all those
Right.
discussions, team building, team bonding, and there is no doubt that those are all very important. and keeps people together, and keeps them. But then having to do that every day, spending an hour in commute, and when you spend an hour in commute, it's not just 1 hour that you're wasting. After you have to get half an hour, 1 hour to get ready, and when you know that you have to leave at 9, your brain starts shutting off 2 hours before that. And if you have traveled 1 hour, you can't just come and start like switch on, right? So you are too tired now, or you might not be feeling tired, but mentally you are not there. Then you get up and have a coffee, and with chit chat. So the whole process is very, very disruptive, or whatever. So saving all that time, being peacefully, especially in our kind of work where it's more where you are product development, etc., which needs a bit more focused time, etc. So it works out very well. We just need to figure out a way where we can get the best of both worlds. So one of the options that we did a few months back was to have, we booked a room in one of the co-working spaces, spent a whole day, where anyone who was nearby, we were about 6-7 people who were in Pune or nearby. So some of those things we should be able to do more, and figure out a way to be in touch, because obviously the rapport that comes with face-to-face meetings, etc., is not higher. So so that's been. Otherwise, from a work point of view, I won't say that the productivity has gone down or gone up. I think purely from a productivity point of view, especially in a small team, either it's difficult to figure out, or it's been same. People have been as productive or as not productive before. But I think mentally and physically, in general, it's a lot more peaceful this way.
Right.
It would take a lot to drag me out of home to go to office on a daily basis.
Right. So, I mean, we have done some work for you, right? And one of the things that you have encouraged, us to also think about is how to get this group in different situations. Like once we've gone to a local park, sometimes we've, used different parts of your office for different situations. So, this coming together for this purpose, right? Not just to kind of just be near each other, but to do something together in interesting ways, and also use it as a learning opportunity. Tell me more about how you have tried to do that in the last 12 years, given all these different constraints.
So we did a couple of things that worked very well. So one thing that we did is that we started 2 calls every week. One is on a Tuesday afternoon and a Friday afternoon, where people give a 30-minute talk on pretty much whatever subject they want to give. Okay. So it's a company-wide call, and typically non-work related. Tuesday's call can have work-related topic if they learn something new, but the Friday call has to be a non-work related topic. So last week someone talked about the GameStop stock thing. Someone talked about what is the best way to organize a party at home. So so things like that. So Purnima gave a talk on bird watching some time back, things like that. So it can be anything and everything. Just yesterday, or rather coming up Friday, there is a talk on the last lecture video. Someone watched that video, made a concise summary on what they liked, and learnings from it, things like that. So what this the goal here is that people get an opportunity to talk, public speaking, opportunity to prepare, opportunity to do something on their own. And since it is not work related and a topic that they chose, it should be more interesting for them to do that, more encouraging for them to do that. So and also for others, it's kind of get to know some new topic, maybe start a new thread in your brain about, okay, let me figure out what this is, and at the end of it, it not, since most of them are doing it for the first time and it's not a regular thing that they do, etc. There might be problems on the way it was presented. So it is a very good learning opportunity for everyone as to what not to do, what to do. And So that kind of, and it is usually followed with the 30-minute of fun sessions, which we copied a lot of ideas that you guys did, and otherwise people figured out other kinds of games or quizzes and whatever. So again, an opportunity where people trying to do something on their own, rather than, because there is a, even who conducts the fun session also changes every week. So there is a so that gets decided. There's one person who actually monitors and then gives the next. There's a calendar who's doing what and things like that. So so even for her who's managing this, it's also a good opportunity in terms of project management, people management, tracking them, asking them, did you finalize the topic, did you finish your PPT, so that in the last minute you get up on Friday morning and try to put something together, right? So if you take everything in the right spirit, all of this is good learning opportunities. So so that worked very well. The other one is a couple of other things. We encouraged a lot of say exercise, gym, yoga kind of thing. So we now even sponsor yoga if someone enrolls for yoga, and we talk a lot of those things, things like that, because sitting at home is a can be a big problem with immunity in general, because not just from your posture and all those things. If you're not going out on an everyday basis, it can be very bad for your immunity. So we've been talking a lot of those things also in our company calls, etc., and encouraging people to join gym, join online workouts or online yogas, etc. And that has also had good response, and people have been taking it up. And the other thing, thanks to you guys, has been the culture of book reading, or in general reading. So a couple of them are enrolled to your reading compound initiative, and that has also had a positive impact on a lot of people taking up on those kinds of activities and coming back and talking about what they did, what they learned, and things like that. So that's pretty much what we have been doing. Though, yeah, so we need to do a bit more in terms of, especially now that the fear of the pandemic has resided, etc., and actually trying to get people together once in a month for brainstorming sessions and learning sessions and just spending time together. Sorry, so I missed one of the other things that we did. So how much ever you talk to people about spend some time learning, do every day 1 hour learning, etc., etc., for all and it's also, some of these things are those simple but not easy but not simple. It's easy to say, what, you got 24 hours in a day, can't you do 1 hour yoga every day? So but it never happens, right? So what we did now is that for the last 3 months or so, everyone gets a day off once in 2 weeks. And that day is fixed for that person, so it has to be on the calendar, and everyone else also knows that this specific person is off. So one day before, they post it on the chat saying, tomorrow I'm not there, it's my learning day. So they get 1 full day of no work, not having to work on the, obviously, unless there's a super critical production issue, etc., etc. And we decide beforehand what are they going to do on that day, what I would like them to cover, and it has some intersection of what they want to do and what I would like them to do. And that has and that is something that even the not having the pressure, doing things in a relaxed mind, where you're not worried about having to finish some task, and invariably you get stuck in that task. So something that is 1 hour takes 4 hours, and then you're already fatigued and things like that. So not having to do anything else other than focusing on very small learning achievement, and maybe ending the day with 1 hour of reading some articles, etc., etc., and then you send out a summary of what you did, has worked out very well. And initially, interestingly, I first proposed it to a few seniors in the office, and then I saw that, okay, it's not really getting accepted well. So then I caught hold of the juniors, and I knew the juniors would listen to me more than the seniors. So and so now I see that it's catching up and most people are doing it, and it has worked really well in terms of uh, the their enthusiasm to do it, as well as what they achieve in that one day is considerable,
Right.
and it also gives you momentum for the rest of the week. So something is left, then you have something to during the weekdays, etc. You'll put some time in figuring it out. But if finally you need the kind of work that we do, you need deep focus time of
Correct.
long period to do things. It's not like you do 1 hour, close it, and you do something else and you continue. So for all said and done, you need really long periods of focus time. So this initiative has encouraged me a lot, made me feel good about this specific idea. And we'll see. I mean, this is fairly new because it's hardly
Correct.
2 or 3 months now. Over a period of 1 year, we'll see how well it works, and something really worth investing on your people, right?
Correct. Now, what I took away from what you said, the range of things that you said was one, um, making it somewhat of a cadence where it is planned and there are different people doing it, not just one person trying to
True.
drive everything top down.
Yeah.
Helps so that it's resilient. It doesn't matter if that person is not there that day. The
Correct.
show just
Correct.
goes on. And also, I think this expanding it beyond just like this 10-minute, 15-minute, or half an hour, but giving yourself both those options.
Yeah.
On regular working days, you need these short bursts. On other days, you want these deeper immersion. Is very interesting. So, but you, as someone, you don't have an HR department, you don't have an L&D department. So what do you do for yourself? Because you're trying to give this message. How do you model the same message yourself?
Sure. So yeah, we have no overheads in the so in fact, when I talked about the 10-15 people company size that we are, so we do everything in those 10-15 people. So we do the sales and marketing of the product sitting in Pune. We do the support, customer support, technical support, end user support, training, product development, legacy data migration, customer onboarding, you say. The whole spectrum is covered within those 10-15 people team. So, and a lot of people are all rounders. They do customer support, technical support, legacy data migration, everything on their own. So yeah, so coming back, one, I was just telling someone that even I need to do this one day in 2 weeks off time, because one is you got to do what you preach. As well as something that I'm starting to feel jealous of those guys being at the end of the day sending an email that I did so many things, and I'm like, okay, if I have to send an email at the end of the day as to what I did, most times I don't have anything concrete to show. So other than that, my working style also has been that because most of the I either have I don't code, so I don't really have that kind of thing. So I'm either dealing with emails, documents, etc. The other times are when I have to respond to a proposal, and where I really need that long time, where I totally shut out chat, emails, and things like that, and just work on that. But so because of the most of my 70-80% of the time I'm dealing with short bursts of different problems, emails, calls, etc. I do take a lot of breaks in between. So so that way I work longer hours in terms of duration. But I go off from my laptop and sit in the terrace, etc., read books or read articles, etc. And also I engage myself in a lot of non-work related things, like say understanding the keeping up with the stock market, politics, Trump, Rihanna, all. So and one thing that I figured out, which is learning, so to say, based on personal experience, as well as say people like Warren Buffett, etc., where to get to become good at something, you don't need to be doing that a lot. You need to close that and be. So I what I started doing more and more now is to not to do anything during for example, do things like gardening, where you're not reading something or reading social media, etc., where you're cooking, gardening, cycling, etc., where and also doing those things without putting your headset, audible, kind of thing. So, and that's when most of your good ideas, most of the problems that you have been thinking about, good product ideas, good features, and then I immediately call Vinayak and have a discussion with him saying, about this. And most times, once you know what you want to do, doing it is the easier part. Trying to get what you want to do and getting that design right, etc., is what is difficult. And so that is something that I do a lot. I am spending a lot of time, say, cleaning the terrace, cleaning the bathroom, all those kinds of things, where you're busy doing something, but you get time to think. And that's something that, and that is something I think helps a lot in terms of coming. So there was this article that I shared recently about, if you're stuck with something, take a walk. Right. So all solutions to problem is to take a walk, leave that problem, and go for a walk. And now I say take a walk without your headset. So so yeah, so I've not been a great reader. Again, something that I'm always jealous about people like you, especially if I was born in America or to rich parents, I would, they would have diagnosed me as ACHD or whatever. When I was kid, I was a very unfocused, very, even now I can't focus deep on things or read a book without. I'm very I'm always shaking my legs and things like that. In fact, one of my clients asked Purnima whether he has ACHD because I was sitting in a dinner and I was continuously doing this. And so I was doing that, I was shaking my legs, so she kind of so anyway, so but in the last 4 or 5 years since I realized the importance of doing that, I have been forcing myself to do that, and typically picking up books that interest me, things like cricket, politics, history, and not just reading books for the sake of becoming better, right? You start reading self-help books and things like that, and that typically that's where I lose my focus. But when I'm reading a good story that I like, I would finish a book in a day or two. I remember Sanjay Manjrekar's autobiography I finished very quickly, and things like that. So I was very surprised with that. So I started doing that, and that helped a lot. And also what I figured out is that when you read a cricketer's book, for example, it's not just the cricket part of it that you learn. Correct. You learn a lot of, what is it that he calls in the last lecture, fake head or something like that. So secondary learning, right? So, for example, I was reading Warren Buffett's book, Snowball. And he talks about how when he was a kid, he used to always criticize people and always, not happy with how others, because since childhood he was always managing one or the other business and had his friends work for him, etc., etc. So that's when he read the some book that I forgot, so which talks about you're not going to get anything out of guys if you criticize them, and even whatever 10-15% they're doing, they're not going to do it. So don't stop criticizing people. And that was a big lesson for me, because I was someone who was, and that's something that I'm trying to fix. Whereas, and also the same book, when it goes ahead, it talks about Charlie Munger having a philosophy of have very low expectation. It's very contrary to otherwise, raise the bar and all those typical, management topic. But he said, key to happiness is low expectation. So now, be it in family, relationships, office, boss, employee, have low expectation, then you're happy, right? So you don't expect this to go and learn from a Warren Buffett book. And that was the point that I was making. You would go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to become good at investing and finance, learn how to manage money, etc. But if you keep an open eye on these things, you will find a lot of different kinds of learnings from whatever little that you read. So that helped a lot.
I think a lot of what you said also is borne out by research. So for example, things like allowing your brain the space to think by focusing on something else, right? So that's now an accepted form of learning. Similarly, learning by exploring your interests and not necessarily, you don't have to read a management book to learn about management. You could probably get it from your, maybe our most recent test series, Victory, will probably teach generations more about management than a book can.
The probably you are better off not reading management books. And in fact, if you talk about test series, the last test series of India Australia is such a big lesson in terms of mentoring juniors, giving them opportunities, and how overly dependent on one or two guys is not really important. And you don't, if someone senior leaves or goes, it's not really end of the world, etc. It's such a big lesson. If you keep your eye open and look for, I'm sure even in a horrible Bollywood movie, there would be something to learn.
Correct. So that actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, which is, so there is this idea of a principal agent problem, the idea that as someone who's an owner, founder, creator, creating that same level of ownership from your next rung, from your junior employees is typically very hard. And a lot of small companies have this big gap between the top tier and the next tier. So, how have you tried to approach this? Is it now a case of low expectations? By the way, this book called Genome by British writer Matt Ridley, which talks about the genome, there is one takeaway I had from that was low expectations are good for your body. It reduces stress,
Yeah,
and it's actually good at a physical level as well. So,
yeah.
coming back to this principal agent problem, how do you get your agents to become principals? Because I'm sure that's what you want to do. You don't want to treat everyone like an agent all the time.
Yeah, the what you see is that, and these things are not, while you obviously want people to have that, obviously you work with people to kind of get that perspective, get that understanding, etc. But at the end of the day, you also have to understand that one is, these things are not not something that will automatically come unless someone starts building that kind of mentality. And the the it might happen a very junior person, and it also a lot of personal attitudes, personal approaches, how you handle things. And I had guys who, after resigning, until the last day would work until 10 in the night to make sure that everything is done, and everything is the client problems or issues, etc. Versus others who are who might not have that kind of ownership. So some of these things are very inbuilt. And also some of these things get built over a period of time when it just happens. And though what I experienced is that these things won't happen just by you trying to drill that in people's head, saying, oh, you need to take more ownership, and because finally people have different priorities. People have their own sets of problems, people have their own priorities, people have their own way of looking at things. And finally we also have to finally understand that, okay, you are the founder, or you are the CEO, you are the manager, whatever. At the same time, they don't, it's not necessary that they have that kind of ownership with what you do. So therefore, having that level of expectation is also wrong at some, so it's if someone surprises you, it's well and good, and you have to keep an eye open to such kind of people. Give them the encouragement and give them the opportunities to do more and more things when you see that they're displaying that skills. But if it does not happen, it should not bother you, is what I feel. So I had all those high expectations. I went through all those phases, and of trying, because when you make that the kind of your focus, or one of your focuses or whatever, it starts becoming very difficult in getting your normal work done. So it's but when you see, because you don't need, when you see that kind of spark in people, it might be a very junior person, it might be a senior person or whatever, then you start feeding, fertilizing that, you start feeding more and more, give them better work, give them challenging tasks to do, get them engaged in with the client, with bigger problems, etc. Then that is probably a better way of doing it.
Right. So take a walk on the terrace and also feed the fertilizers or the nurture this kind of a garden as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Srikanth, we are almost at the end of our time. So before we go, I have a couple of quick questions for you. One is that it looks like, especially after 2020, it looks like biology-related startups, biotech, bioinformatics, all are set to boom. So do you see any major opportunities for technologists among our listeners and viewers, what do you see as the future for all these different spaces?
No, so definitely, like we see in our own business, a lot of new work, new customers who would otherwise have taken a long time to enroll are now within matter of weeks, matter of the contracts are getting signed quicker. People whom we have been talking to for years, now it's much quicker to do that. So obviously there is and with the government change now, there probably is going to be in the US going to be a lot more money allocated for funding, because we in general research depends on government funding. So all that is great, and also the commercial healthcare side of things is also changing. A lot of focus on telemedicine, remote medicine, etc. One of my friends is doing something in that. So all that is great opportunities, but then it also coming up with product ideas, or on the other side, coming up with good product ideas, but then ideas are cheap. There are thousands of amazing ideas. The implementation, the product fit, the market fit, all those kinds of finally the source code or developing the product is 10% of the problem, and everything else is the much bigger problem. And that's where the whether you want to remain bootstrap, funded, all those kinds of issues comes into picture. So the technology wise, I think there are a lot of, and if you just look at India, and I'm surprised the same in developed countries like US, for example. A lot of people whom we onboard, and these are like top notch research centers. Like we started working with Oxford in the last year. We work with centers like say Stanford, Hopkins. Many of them are still recording data in Excel sheets. And so it's and if you now which is not very different than say you go to a Pune hospital or things like that. So there's a huge opportunity in terms of digitization and EMR, the medical record kind of business, etc. But the barrier there is always that there's a lot of resistance from the people, because they don't have enough trained staff to do such things. The products are not user friendly. It's not it takes too many clicks, too many clunky things, and a lot of these are legacy products, etc. So whoever brings together a solution for all these problems will be successful in some sense. So it's a golden opportunity for people. So now we're also coming up with one more product in consenting. So for every research project, you need to consent the patient. So this whole consent recording business is a business in the sense, from a problem point of view, is a complicated problem, because you need, some patients will be able to do it from home, some patients will need a lot of help. There's a lot of and it has to be monitored. So many regulations on how someone got consented, etc., etc. So all these are very interesting problems. So there are so many different problems that you can solve.
Yeah. And if someone were to want to get their hands dirty, get started, they are a technologist, no idea about these fields. Is there a good source that you would recommend to them to get started? Something to follow?
Unless you have my usual way has been to follow from a purely technology point of view. If you're trying to learn products and things, is to follow the best open source solutions in that domain, because usually they are more vocal communities. And if you spot a problem that you're interested in, and if you contact them, they're very forthcoming. They'll even come on a call, give you demos, show you everything, and those kinds of things. So getting involved, if you know what you want to do, that is, you already figured out, okay, I want to do something in consenting or EMR, etc. There are amazing products in each one of these domains. So getting involved with those kinds of initiatives or forums, etc. is. But if you are generally looking for, okay, trying to cast a wide net, etc. I think one thing that, again, in the last 1 year, that I was totally off social media other than LinkedIn. I have no other social media presence until a year back. But until that is, I discovered Twitter. to be, I always thought of Twitter as the toilet of the world. It's all the only trolling, gully garage and all those things happen. But if you following the right kind of people on Twitter is I think worth any course that you would get. It could be very focused things like, okay, writing. So whom do I follow for good writing related content, stocks, cricket, things like that. So if you know what you're doing, and following the right kind of people on Twitter, I think can be is something that if can be very educational, or give you sources of information that's very hard to find.
All right. So Srikanth, on that note, thank you so much for talking about your journey and Krishagni's journey so far. Very interesting thoughts, and I'm sure we'll do a follow-up of this and find out what else you've been learning and exploring. So thank you so
thanks,
much.
Ramanand. So you have been a reason why I had to get up and shave and get ready in the morning, which is something that I'm not used to doing. So thanks.
So now we know the secret to your personal grooming. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.